The morning sun cast long shadows across the military base as Sergeant Marcus Williams walked toward the armory. His boots echoed against the concrete floor of the weapons storage facility. It was supposed to be a routine day, just like any other Tuesday at Fort Henderson. Marcus had received a simple request from his commanding officer to retrieve a standard-issue sidearm for a new recruits training session. Marcus had been working in the armory for 8 years. He knew every weapon, every serial number, and every storage location by heart. The other soldiers often joked that he could find any piece of equipment blindfolded. Today felt no different as he punched in his access code and entered the secure weapons vault. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus scanned the rows of carefully organized firearms. Each weapon had its designated spot, labeled and catalogued according to strict military protocol. He moved towards Section C7, where the standard training pistols were stored. His fingers traced along the metal shelving until he found what he was looking for. The Beretta M9 pistol sat in its designated slot, clean and properly maintained. Marcus lifted it carefully, following the safety procedures he had practiced thousands of times. As he began the standard inspection routine, something caught his eye. There, etched into the metal near the trigger guard, was a small marking he had never seen before. The marking was barely visible, no bigger than a thumbnail. It appeared to be some kind of symbol or code, scratched into the gun's surface with precision. Marcus squinted, trying to make out the details. The marking looked like 2 words, but the letters were small and partially worn from handling. He carried the weapon over to the inspection table under the bright overhead lamp. The additional light revealed the marking more clearly. His heart skipped a beat as he read the words etched into the metal, Black Talon. Marcus had heard whispers about Black Talon before, though he had never seen it himself. It was supposedly some kind of special ammunition or weapon modification that was highly classified. The stories he had heard suggested it was connected to covert operations, the kind that never appeared in official military records. His training told him to report any unusual markings or modifications immediately. But something about this discovery made him pause. The weapon was supposed to be a standard training pistol, identical to hundreds of others in the armory. How did this particular gun end up with such a marking? Marcus decided to do some quick research before filing his report. He pulled up the weapon's history on the computer terminal. According to the records, this particular Beretta had been in service for 12 years. It had been assigned to various training units and had never been flagged for any special operations or modifications. The service record showed nothing unusual: regular maintenance checks, standard training exercises, and routine transfers between different units. Yet here it was, bearing a marking that suggested something far more serious than basic military training. As Marcus stared at the screen, he noticed something else strange. The weapon's assignment history showed a gap of 6 months from 3 years ago. During that time, there was no record of where the gun had been or who had been using it. It was as if the weapon had simply disappeared from the system before reappearing in the standard training inventory. The sound of footsteps in the corridor made Marcus look up from the computer. He quickly minimized the screen and placed the pistol back on the inspection table. Another soldier entered the armory, looking for ammunition for the afternoon training session. Marcus helped him locate what he needed, all while keeping one eye on the marked weapon. After the soldier left, Marcus found himself alone again with the mysterious pistol. He picked it up once more, examining every inch of the weapon for any other unusual markings or modifications. The rest of the gun appeared completely standard, but the Black Talon marking seemed to burn into his vision. He knew he should follow protocol and report the discovery immediately, but something told him this was bigger than a simple paperwork error. The missing 6 months in the weapon's history, the secretive nature of the marking, and the stories he had heard about Black Talon operations all pointed to something that required careful handling. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Instead of filing an immediate report, he would do some discreet investigation first. He needed to understand what he had stumbled upon before involving the chain of command. Little did he know that his decision had already set events in motion that would reach the highest levels of military command. Meanwhile, in the base commander's office, General Patricia Hayes was reviewing routine reports when her secure phone rang. The caller was someone she had not heard from in years, someone connected to operations that officially never existed. The voice on the other end was calm but urgent. "General, we have a problem. One of your people may have found something they shouldn't have. Something related to an old project called Black Talon." General Hayes felt her blood run cold. She had hoped never to hear that name again. Black Talon had been buried years ago, along with all the secrets it contained, or so she had thought. What exactly has been found? she asked, her voice steady despite the growing concern in her chest. A weapon. One of the marked ones that was supposed to have been destroyed. It's turned up in your base armory, and we have reason to believe someone has discovered the marking. The general closed her eyes, thinking quickly. Black Talon had been a joint operation between military intelligence and other agencies, the details of which were classified at levels that most generals would never see. The weapons used in those operations had been specially marked and were supposed to have been destroyed when the project was terminated. Clearly, something had gone wrong with the disposal process. Now, years later, one of those weapons had surfaced in a routine training facility, threatening to expose secrets that powerful people had worked very hard to bury. "I'll handle this personally," General Hayes told the caller. "Give me the details of what you know." As she listened to the briefing, the general realized that what had started as a simple equipment request was about to become something much more serious. She would need to move quickly and carefully to contain the situation before it spiraled out of control. The caller provided her with the name of the soldier who had likely discovered the marking. Sergeant Marcus Williams. The general made a note of the name. She would need to speak with Sergeant Williams very soon, and that conversation would determine whether this situation could be resolved quietly or whether it would explode into something that could threaten national security. After ending the call, General Hayes sat in silence for several minutes, staring out the window at the base where she had served for the past 5 years. She had always known that the past had a way of catching up with people, but she had hoped her involvement with Black Talon would remain buried forever. Now she faced a choice that would test everything she believed about duty, honor, and the greater good. The easy solution would be to simply confiscate the weapon, transfer Sergeant Williams to another base, and pretend nothing had happened. But she knew that once secrets like this started to surface, they had a tendency to keep coming back. The general reached for her phone to call her aide. It was time to pay a personal visit to the base armory. She needed to see this weapon for herself and assess exactly how much Sergeant Williams knew. Depending on what she found, the next few hours could determine the fate of several people, including herself. As she prepared to leave her office, General Hayes reflected on the bitter irony of the situation. Black Talon had been designed to eliminate threats to national security quietly and efficiently. Now, years later, the very existence of the program had become a threat that needed to be eliminated. The afternoon sun was beginning to set as she walked across the base toward the armory, her mind racing with possibilities and contingencies. She had dealt with classified situations before, but nothing quite like this. The stakes were higher than most people could imagine, and failure was not an option. Behind her, the setting sun cast long shadows across the base, as if darkness was already beginning to fall on Fort Henderson. Marcus Williams had spent the rest of his shift thinking about the mysterious marking on the pistol. When his replacement arrived that evening, he made sure to secure the weapon in a separate location from the other training firearms. He told himself it was just a precaution while he figured out the proper reporting procedure, but deep down he knew he was buying himself time to understand what he had discovered. That night, Marcus went home to his small apartment off the base and fired up his personal computer. He had some contacts from his previous assignments who might be able to shed light on what Black Talon meant. His first call was to Tommy Rodriguez, a former military police officer who now worked as a civilian contractor for various government agencies.
Marcus, good to hear from you, man. Tommy's voice came through the phone with genuine warmth.
"What's going on?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "I came across something at work today, and I'm trying to understand what I'm dealing with. Have you ever heard of something called Black Talon?" The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds. When Tommy finally spoke, his voice had changed completely. The warmth was gone, replaced by something that sounded like fear. "Marcus, where did you hear that name?" "I can't really say, but I need to know what it means. Is it some kind of special operations thing?" "Listen to me very carefully," Tommy said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Black Talon is not something you want to be asking questions about. It's not something you want to know about. If you've stumbled across something related to that program, you need to forget about it right now." Marcus felt his stomach drop. What kind of program was it? The kind that officially never existed. The kind that involves people who make problems disappear. "Marcus, I'm telling you this as a friend. Walk away from whatever you found. File it away and forget it exists." After Tommy hung up, Marcus sat in his apartment feeling more confused and worried than before. His friend's reaction had confirmed that Black Talon was serious, but it had also made clear that asking questions could be dangerous. Unable to sleep, Marcus spent hours researching online, trying to find any public information about Black Talon. Most of his searches returned nothing, but eventually he found a few references buried in congressional hearing transcripts and leaked government documents. The information was fragmented and heavily redacted, but a picture slowly began to emerge. Black Talon appeared to have been some kind of joint military and intelligence operation active during the late 90s and early 2000s. The documents suggested it involved targeted elimination of individuals considered threats to national security, both domestic and international. The operations were conducted with complete deniability, using unmarked weapons and untraceable methods. One document mentioned that Black Talon operatives used specially modified weapons with unique identifying marks, though the specific nature of these marks was redacted. Another reference suggested that the program had been shut down following a classified incident that resulted in congressional oversight and the destruction of all related materials. As Marcus read through the limited information available, he began to understand the magnitude of what he had discovered. The weapon in his armory wasn't just a mislabeled training pistol. It was evidence of covert operations that were supposed to have been erased from history. The next morning, Marcus arrived at work early, hoping to examine the weapon again before the day's training exercises began. But as he approached the armory, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. There was a black sedan parked outside the building, the kind of unmarked government vehicle that usually meant serious trouble. Inside the armory, Marcus found General Hayes waiting for him, along with two men in civilian clothes who had the unmistakable bearing of federal agents. The general's expression was neutral, but Marcus could see the tension in her posture. "Sergeant Williams," the general said formally, "I understand you discovered an irregularity in one of our weapons yesterday." Marcus felt his mouth go dry. "Yes, ma'am. I was planning to file a report this morning." "That won't be necessary," one of the civilian agents said, stepping forward. "We're here to handle this matter personally. I'm Agent Carson from the Department of Defense Inspector General's office. We need you to show us exactly what you found." Marcus led them to where he had secured the marked pistol. As he retrieved it from the separate storage locker, he could feel all three sets of eyes watching his every movement. He placed the weapon on the inspection table and pointed to the small marking near the trigger guard. General Hayes examined the marking closely, her face revealing nothing. But Marcus noticed that her hands trembled slightly as she held the weapon. Agent Carson took several photographs of the marking from different angles before carefully placing the pistol in an evidence bag. "Sergeant Williams," the general said, turning to face him directly, "I need you to tell me exactly what you've done since discovering this marking. Have you discussed it with anyone? Have you researched it in any way?" Marcus realized he was at a crossroads. He could lie and hope they didn't discover his research, or he could tell the truth and hope his honesty would work in his favor. Looking at the serious expressions around him, he decided on honesty. "I made some discreet inquiries, ma'am. I wanted to understand what I was dealing with before filing a report. I spoke with one former colleague and did some basic research online." Agent Carson and his partner exchanged glances. "What specifically did you learn from your research?" Carson asked. Marcus took a deep breath. That Black Talon was some kind of classified operation that officially never existed. That it involved elimination of targets considered threats to national security, and that all evidence of the program was supposed to have been destroyed years ago. The silence in the room was deafening. General Hayes closed her eyes briefly, as if processing the implications of what Marcus had just revealed. When she opened them again, her expression had hardened. "Sergeant, you've stumbled into something that involves national security at the highest levels," she said. "What happens next depends largely on your cooperation and discretion." Agent Carson stepped closer to Marcus. "We need to know exactly who you contacted and what information you accessed. We also need your complete cooperation in resolving this situation quietly. The alternative would be much less pleasant for everyone involved." Marcus felt the weight of the threat in Carson's words. These weren't people who made idle threats. He provided them with Tommy Rodriguez's contact information and detailed his online research activities. As he spoke, the second agent was taking notes on everything he said. "There's something else you need to understand, Sergeant," General Hayes said when he finished. "The person who contacted you yesterday, Tommy Rodriguez, reported your inquiry to his current employers within hours. That's how we knew to come here today." Marcus felt betrayed and foolish. Tommy hadn't been trying to protect him with his warnings. He had been gathering information for someone else. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Now we determine whether you're an asset or a liability," Agent Carson replied bluntly. "Black Talon may be officially dead, but there are people who were involved in those operations who are still very much alive and active in government and intelligence circles. The existence of this weapon and the knowledge you've gained poses a threat to those individuals." General Hayes placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "I'm going to be honest with you, Sergeant. Your life changed the moment you discovered that marking. The only question now is whether it changes for better or worse." The second agent finally spoke for the first time. "We're prepared to offer you an opportunity, Sergeant Williams. A transfer to a special assignment, where your skills and knowledge could be valuable to ongoing national security operations. The alternative is that we classified this entire incident, you sign extensive non-disclosure agreements, and you spend the rest of your military career in assignments where you'll never again have access to sensitive materials." Marcus looked around the room at the three faces watching him. He realized that his simple desire to understand what he had found had led him into something far more complex and dangerous than he had ever imagined. The weapon that had started all of this was now sealed in an evidence bag, but the secrets it represented were still very much alive. "What kind of special assignment?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. General Hayes and Agent Carson exchanged another glance before the general spoke. "The kind where you help us make sure that other Black Talon materials that might still be out there don't surface in the wrong hands. The kind where you become part of the solution instead of part of the problem." As Marcus considered his options, he realized that his discovery had revealed something much larger than a single misplaced weapon. There were apparently other Black Talon materials still unaccounted for, and powerful people were willing to go to great lengths to keep them secret. The morning sun streamed through the armory windows, but Marcus felt like darkness was closing in around him. Whatever choice he made in the next few minutes would determine not just his career, but possibly his life. Marcus Williams stared at the three people waiting for his answer, knowing that whatever he decided would change his life forever. The weight of the moment pressed down on him like a physical force. He thought about his 8 years of faithful service, his clean record, and his simple desire to do the right thing that had led him to this crossroads. "If I agree to this special assignment," he said slowly, "what guarantee do I have that I won't just disappear like the people Black Talon was designed to eliminate?" Agent Carson's expression didn't change, but Marcus caught a flicker of what might have been respect in his eyes. "Smart question, Sergeant. The guarantee is that you're more valuable to us alive and cooperative than dead and silent. We need people we can trust, people who understand the importance of keeping secrets, and people who have already proven they can handle sensitive situations." General Hayes stepped closer to Marcus. "I'm going to tell you something that's not in any official record, Sergeant. 3 years ago, there was another incident similar to this. A Navy technician found Black Talon materials during a routine equipment inventory. He chose the non-disclosure route, signed all the papers, accepted a transfer to a desk job, and promised to forget everything he had seen." She paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. 6 months later, he was found dead in his apartment. Apparent suicide. The official report said he had been struggling with depression and financial problems. But those of us who knew about his discovery understood that some secrets are too dangerous to leave in the hands of people who aren't committed to protecting them. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The message was clear. Cooperation wasn't just his best option. It might be his only option for survival. "What exactly would this special assignment involve?" he asked. The second agent, who had been silent until now, opened a briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Over the past 5 years, we've identified 17 separate incidents where Black Talon materials have surfaced unexpectedly. Weapons, documents, equipment, even ammunition with the special markings. Each time, we've had to move quickly to secure the materials and manage the situation." He opened the folder and showed Marcus a map dotted with red pins. "These are the locations where materials have been found. Military bases, police departments, private collectors, even overseas arms dealers. The pattern suggests that when Black Talon was shut down, the cleanup was not as thorough as everyone believed." Agent Carson took over the explanation. "We believe there are people who were involved in the original program who kept some materials for personal insurance policies. Now those materials are slowly leaking into circulation through various channels. Your job would be to help us track down these materials before they fall into the wrong hands." General Hayes pulled up a chair and sat down facing Marcus. "I'm going to be completely honest with you, Sergeant, because I think you deserve to know what you're getting into. Black Talon wasn't just about eliminating foreign threats. It was also used to handle domestic problems that couldn't be resolved through normal legal channels." She paused, clearly struggling with how much to reveal. There were operations against American citizens who were considered security risks, journalists who were getting too close to classified information, whistleblowers who threatened to expose sensitive programs, politicians who were asking the wrong questions. Marcus felt the room spinning around him. "You're talking about assassination operations against American citizens on American soil. I'm talking about protecting national security by any means necessary," General Hayes corrected. "And the people who made those decisions, who carried out those operations, who covered them up afterward, many of them are still in positions of power throughout the government and intelligence community." Agent Carson stepped forward again. "The discovery of Black Talon materials isn't just an embarrassment to be covered up, Sergeant. It's a direct threat to people who could bring down administrations, end careers, and possibly face criminal prosecution if the full truth about the program ever came to light." Marcus was beginning to understand the real scope of what he had stumbled into. So this special assignment isn't really about protecting national security. It's about protecting the people who committed crimes in the name of national security. "Sometimes those are the same thing," the second agent said quietly. "The people we're protecting include cabinet members, generals, intelligence directors, and federal judges. If they go down, they'll take a lot of other people with them, including many who had nothing to do with Black Talon but who worked in the same agencies or administrations." General Hayes stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the base where she had served with distinction for so many years. "I was a young captain when I first learned about Black Talon. I thought it was about protecting America from its enemies. It took me years to understand that sometimes America's biggest enemies are the people who claim to be protecting it." She turned back to face Marcus. "But by the time I understood that, I was already in too deep to get out clean. The same choice I'm offering you now was offered to me 15 years ago. I chose cooperation, and it's kept me alive and allowed me to do some good work within a corrupt system." Marcus looked around the room at the three people who held his fate in their hands. He realized that they weren't necessarily the villains in this story, but they weren't the heroes either. They were people who had been caught up in something bigger than themselves and were now trying to manage a situation that had spiraled out of control. "If I agree to this assignment," Marcus said, "what exactly would I be doing on a day-to-day basis?" Agent Carson pulled out another document from the briefcase. "You would be assigned to a joint task force that operates under the cover of routine military logistics and security operations. You'd travel to locations where Black Talon materials have been reported, assess the situation, secure the materials, and handle any witnesses or complications." "Handle witnesses?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he knew what that meant. "Usually through financial compensation, job transfers, or non-disclosure agreements," the second agent explained. "Sometimes through more creative solutions. Violence is always a last resort, but it's not off the table if national security is at stake." Marcus thought about his conversation with Tommy Rodriguez, realizing now that Tommy had likely gone through this same process years ago and chosen cooperation over resistance. He wondered how many other people were out there, living their lives while secretly working to keep the Black Talon program buried. "And if I refuse?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. General Hayes returned to her seat. "Then you sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement, accept a transfer to a desk job in military administration, and hope that your knowledge of Black Talon never becomes inconvenient for anyone with the power to do something about it." The room fell silent as Marcus considered his options. Outside, he could hear the normal sounds of military life continuing, vehicles moving around the base, soldiers conducting training exercises, officers going about their daily duties. None of them knew that a conversation was taking place that could affect the highest levels of government. Finally, Marcus made his decision. "I want to see the real files," he said. "If I'm going to be part of this, I need to understand exactly what Black Talon did, who was involved, and what we're really protecting." Agent Carson smiled for the first time since entering the armory.
"I was hoping you'd say that, Sergeant."
"Someone who asks the right questions is exactly what we need for this work." General Hayes stood up and extended her hand to Marcus. "Welcome to the most secret assignment in the American military, Sergeant Williams. Your official transfer orders will show a routine assignment to the Pentagon Logistics Department." Your real work begins immediately. As Marcus shook the general's hand, he realized that his simple discovery of a marking on a training pistol had led him into the darkest corners of American government operations. He would spend the next several years traveling around the world, tracking down Black Talon materials and managing the people who discovered them. Some of those people would accept cooperation deals like his own. Others would choose silence and transfers to harmless positions, and a few who posed too great a risk or asked too many questions would simply disappear. Marcus often thought about that Tuesday morning when he had first seen the Black Talon marking etched into the metal of what he thought was a simple training weapon. He had wanted to do the right thing by reporting an irregularity. Instead, he had discovered that sometimes doing the right thing meant becoming part of something very wrong. The weapon that had started it all was eventually destroyed in a classified facility, along with hundreds of other Black Talon materials that the task force recovered over the years. But Marcus knew that somewhere out there other marked weapons and documents were still hidden, waiting for the next unsuspecting person to discover them. And when that happened, Marcus or someone like him would receive a phone call and the cycle would begin again. Because some secrets were too dangerous to remain buried and too dangerous to be exposed. They could only be managed, one discovery at a time, by people who had chosen to become part of the secret rather than victims of it. Years later, Marcus would become the one making those phone calls, recruiting new people into the endless task of keeping Black Talon buried, and he would always remember the choice he had been given in that armory, and wonder how many other people across the government and military were living with similar secrets, bound together by their knowledge of operations that officially never existed. The simple gun request that had started everything became a reminder that in the world of classified operations and national security, there were no simple discoveries, no innocent questions, and no clean endings. There were only people trying to manage impossible situations, while hoping they never became the next problem that needed to be solved.